Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to another video. And today I am very excited to bring you a little interview with Jeff. He's going to be telling us a little bit about growing for flower versus growing for extraction. So Jeff is an expert in cannabis extraction, and he works with a lot of the big pharmaceutical growers and companies growing in South Africa and around the world. And he is going to be just giving us a little bit of that rundown. So just in brief, if you want to end up with a certain product, for instance, flower or like boutique buds, you're going to change a whole bunch of your processes leading up to that outcome. And this also applies to home growers and small growers. You know, if you want to end up with, you know, boutique flower or something you just want to press, it's literally going to change the entire sequence from your genetics, from your style, from indoor, outdoor, you know, however many factors are involved. They can pretty much all change. So we got someone on just to give a little bit of clarification on that, and hopefully you guys managed to follow along and leave some comments below if you have any questions, and we'll try our best to answer them. And of course, make sure to like and subscribe, and enjoy, guys. Hi, Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us today on this important topic. And thanks again for coming. And I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about why people grow, you know, the differences between growing for extraction and growing for flower. So sort of as a overview, what can you give us a little bit of information on that?
Yeah, sure. Awesome. So the biggest thing is when you're growing for obviously extraction, you're really going for high volumes of biomass. So your first obvious point is what genetic. So you're looking for high CBD, high CBG, THC genetic. It's often easier commercially for a lot of guys to grow for biomass outdoors. You just got to obviously consider there's some risk with that. And I think this is always the issue when it comes to commercial. Growing outdoors is great for certain varietals, but you got that risk profile of the elements, you know, whether that's under netting, whether that's in more, let's call it less hermetically sealed. So the air is not as tightly regulated in a greenhouse. There you're just looking to get maximum yield. And on the opposite side, when we're growing for flower, like depending on the market, like the responsible adult use, you know, there's still this appreciation for amazing flower. So you've really got to, like indoor does win out there often. And then I think for medical patients, when we talk about prescription cannabis, it's really about that knowledge or that sense that a physician or a doctor wants to be able to provide the same type of flower every time for dosing purposes. And therefore that consistency is actually a big thing. And I think that's often the thing people overlook when they compare the adult use and the prescription model, because a physician and a doctor wants to give it to you for 2 years, 3 years, get you kind of normalized, and therefore changing genetics the whole time is not the greatest. Whereas I think there's this constant need in the adult use where you're growing for different things because of market consumption trends. So, you know, whatever's popular wins out versus what's consistent wins out for medical prescription. And there's some nuances. I mean, we can talk about irradiation as well if you want to.
So do you find a lot of the guys that are growing sort of for an extraction purpose? I mean, I guess you've got to define what type of extraction they're going to do. And luckily we are going to do a video on that, which will be quite cool to see in the future. But do you find that some of them are growing for, like, some of them are going to be, if they're going to do extraction, they're going to pick their genetics a little bit more like, okay, I want to grow for CBG, or I want to grow for CBD, or I want to grow for THC Delta 8, or, you know, some sort of, they pick it more on like sort of the cannabinoid profile. Do you see that quite often?
Yeah, I'd say that. And I think terpenes as well. Like, you know, CBDs become very standardized. Even Delta 9s become standardized. A lot of guys are now chemically synthesizing CBD into Delta 8 and then running from that as a hemp-derived product in the US. I think the big thing is the terpene quality, as well as like if you're going for a CBG genetic. You're really going to then grow that specific genetic. I think for extraction, there's actually two ways to look at it. I mean, often guys who grow for very high quality flower, they'll have all this trim, sugar leaves, like, you know, popcorn buds. They want to not lose that. They want to use that for extraction as well. It's a little different because it's a much smaller scale than when we talk about bulk growing for extraction, which is usually outdoor sourced and then shipped to an extraction facility where they just, you know, pay by the pound, you know, and they're really trying to move as much of that through. And I think that's the thing is, like, I think when you got an indoor extraction focus, you're really on the terpenes. You lose a lot of those terpenes to the elements sometimes outdoors. It really depends on how aggressive that harvest is. You know, if you're manually trimming versus like automating that process in terms of trimming that way. So yeah, those things that can be considered for sure.
And there is an opportunity for people to obviously grow for, you can still grow for extraction in the sense of, indoor, hermetically sealed, consistency, because I think some of the adult use recreational market is using extraction-based products these days, maybe not on the large scale extraction in terms of like they're not taking isolates and things like that, but they are probably taking things like rosin and your sources. But yeah, that's like you were saying, like the terpenes must be incredibly important for that market.
No, precisely. I mean, there are a lot of cultivators in the US. Let's use them as a model because there are certain companies that grow indoor flower for extraction, which is normally the rarer version of it, normally indoors for specifically connoisseurs, high-grade flower, but they specifically do high-grade rosin. They do high-grade hash even, Hash tends to be a little more of, that medium grade. I stand to be corrected, People really do grow, and they got these different serve levels where they manually, and if you go to Morocco, you'll see the extent of how that hash industry is built itself. But it's one of, I think also when we think about extractions for the prescription model, like the medical side, they also want to mitigate any kind of real risk that's presented to the products. So there you'd also see indoor grown for extraction, and therefore they can afford it because they extract, they reformulate, and then they bring those terpenes and the different isolates together to make a specific dosage form for the patient.
100%. So yeah, just I suppose in a little bit in closing, guys, if you're listening and you're thinking about where you want to grow, we get this question asked so many times, is because people, you want to get into the space, you want to get licensed, you want to get into growing. You kind of need to look at the end point to know where to start. So you need to first come and sit down, either with, us or someone like Jeff, and you need to say, okay, I want to grow for flower, or I want to grow for a medical product, or I want to grow for just extraction, not medical product. And then you've got your baseline, and then everything before that changes completely. It's your genetic choice, your indoor, outdoor application, your testing along the way. It's going to be vastly different. We can sort of help you guide you along that process as much as possible. And hopefully some of the information today helped. Jeff, do you have any last tips for some of maybe I think the commercial growers don't really get enough info, but like if those guys are looking at, they're making that decision of where they want to end up. Is there anything big things they must consider, if they're thinking, I want to do extraction, then they need space, or any big factors that we can share with them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it to you quickly. Essentially, it's more stable. So if you're sitting on a lot of flower, you've got to look to oxidation, like how are you storing that? Are you doing an argon, nitrogen seal, vacuum seal in that flower? You don't want to have the flower now deteriorate because you're waiting to move it. Therefore, in that region, extraction is really good. Extraction is really good because of the space that's consumed, from inventory. It isn't that great, obviously, because you've got to invest in a bit of more space. That facility needs to be as controlled as possible. But that's important. And I'd say also look at things like, if you're really looking to European markets, things like irradiation, because even the little bit of microbes there, if it's going to be stored very long, those are the things people don't look at, is how is storage being considered? And it's easy when you think about growing and consuming it, because that's a pretty hand-to-mouth kind of scenario at home. But when we talk commercially, there are some of the benefits there for extraction is, that storage condition and the logistics actually starts to weigh in quite a bit on your factors.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, that's the extraction benefits of storage. I mean, it just must be immense. And like we've seen it hands down, people struggling with, commercial operations struggling with offtake agreements because they have, because it's not an easy thing to do, but then also now they're sitting with flour that's, by day degrading. And yeah, it adds those complexities to it. Whereas you're sitting with extract, it's going to be a little bit, you still have a time frame, but it's, completely on a different level. All right, guys, thanks so much for watching. And Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again in future.
Awesome. Thanks for the time. Appreciate the channel.